I'm a biologist. I'm executive director of the California Native Plant Society. We're celebrating our 50th year right now, 50 years of preserving the biodiversity of California. And we're a little bit different. We're not an environmental organization. To me, environmentalist means like air breather. Everyone's an environmentalist. We're a biological conservation organization. We want to save the evolutionary legacy of planet Earth, starting with California. This is in the category of, and now for something completely different. My intent here is to partly give you some pretty pictures so you get that little endorphin thing from seeing a little bit of nature after a day of being indoors. And then also to give you guys a little bit of insight on why your work is so important and some considerations as you move forward of how to make sure that it really achieves the goals, some of the big goals that are driving everybody. So just to step back, this is Earth a while ago, 175 million years ago. As you well know, this is a system powered by a hybrid reactor design. We've got a nice big reactor up in the sky doing some fusion, and unfortunately we've got a bunch of good isotopes beneath us keeping it all really molten. And that's very important for us and everything else alive on this planet. Not just so that we have a magnetosphere that keeps the ionizing radiation off us, but also because we've got plate tectonics. So this is Earth 175 million years ago. One continent. About one continent's worth of biodiversity. We've got a good fossil record. It's not bad. There's probably a lot of planets in the galaxy that have that level of diversity. Fortunately, we've got plate tectonics moving things around, pulling things apart. So this is the configuration that we've got today. And the different colors show you Wallace's zoogeographic realms. Those are each essentially different stories of life, different histories. As separation happened and life continued to evolve, those stories developed separately on different continents. So we have ostriches grazing in Africa, and we've got bighorns in California. We've got a lot of continents worth of diversity. We're very lucky. And fortunately, we're managing to save a lot of it. Focusing on California, we're especially lucky here. We are one of Earth's great biodiversity hotspots. 5 of those hotspots are Mediterranean climate zones, all on the western sides of continents. And that gives us a Mediterranean climate, summer dry, winter wet. And that can lead to a lot of diversification, a lot of radiation, and also because of a bunch of biogeography, as you get episodes of climate change, as it gets warmer or colder, you get whole biotas moving north, and then as they retreat, they leave bits of themselves behind, and as the southern biota moves south. And so California just had this pumping of diversity, with the northern flora moving down as things cool, and a southern biota moving north. And each time this wave of diversity moves over California, it leaves some of itself behind in nooks and crannies, north-facing wet seeps, that kind of stuff. Fortunately, because of plate tectonics, we've also got great topographic diversity. As the North American plate has been slammed into by the Pacific plate, mountains have been uplifted, and has created a lot of topography. And that also has helped us to have a bunch of evolutionary radiations. The north side of the hill is different from the south side of the hill. And in California, everywhere you go is going to have a hill. This is really another part of the great engine of diversification that has made California a great biodiversity hotspot. We've got geologic diversity. As things get pushed up and erode, you get different mineral types emerging, eroded, and you get different soil types. And this plant, 2 seeds fall from a mother plant, one falls on serpentine soil and one on calcareous, and selection happens. And fast forward a few million years and you've got different species. And so this is part of the engine that's been driving diversification. As a result, we've got tremendous rarity. California has, as I keep saying, we are a biodiversity hotspot. We've got more than 7,000 species of plants, which is a lot. I mean, that is a lot. 1/3 of them are rare, so we have tremendous rarity. That doesn't mean they're going extinct. It just means that they happen to be on that one patch of a north-facing mountain that had that weird soil, and it's always been there, and hopefully it always will be. So this is what my organization is trying to protect, and I think is an example of what you guys are hoping to protect with the work that you're doing. When you look beyond California, this is the same story everywhere. As things change, as plates move around and as climate changes, we have great diversification, and we have inherited a biota that really is spectacular. And in the centuries to come, we will depend on for the raw material to build what we need. And just to run through the pretty picture part, In California, we've got ancient lineages like this giant sequoia. This is something that was widespread across North America for a very long time until long episodes of climate occurred. It was lost from most of North America, except for some nice cool hills in Sequoia, Kings Canyon National Park, that kind of stuff. Ancient lineages persist in California because we have nooks and crannies that they can survive in, long past the time when their brethren have been lost from everything else. We also have new diversification. This is a patch of white baby blue eyes. Baby blue eyes is a blue flower. When I give this talk to botanists, they go, oh. So baby blue eyes is a flower that emerged in California fairly recently, in the last million years or so. The white form of baby blue eyes is a new species that's emerged much more recently than that. And within this, we already have emergence of new forms. So a lot of us look at these as basically hyper-complex crystals of atoms linked together into molecules, self-replicating with some variation, and that variation being subject to selection. It's basically the same as clay crystals, but obviously these living crystals can do a lot more, and they continue to evolve and to change and to show us, to reveal the underlying mathematics of the universe. It's kind of cool. So this is what you get in California. You get very old lineages mixed with emerging lineages. And you get this all over the world. They provide habitat for the things that most people care about, animals. We love them just because they're bigger than our head. We love them just because we love them. Look at that. When you look at this, you feel good. So this is what we have to lose. This is what we need to save. And this is what we need to save it from. So this is population density. In California, again, it's my focus. Fortunately, it's one of the most important places of the Earth, so I don't feel like I'm wasting my time working on California. But population density is our current big problem, and it will abate over time, maybe in a century, maybe in 5 centuries, but there won't be as many humans here at some point in the future. We just need to hang on till then. The big threats to biodiversity, number 1 threat is habitat loss. This is a picture of Mount Tam, north of the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, painted in 1934, 3 years before the Golden Gate Bridge was built, when you had to take a little boat across to get there. This is Mount Tam 3 years ago. So this is habitat loss, and this is the main threat to biological diversity in California, North America, planet Earth, you name it. Second big threat I skipped over is biological invasions, especially diseases. Third largest threat has been and continues to be pollution. And this is acid rain forming pollution that you recognize, but a lot of us today are talking about other forms of pollution, excess CO2 emissions into the atmosphere, a form of pollution that has all kinds of big effects. And so climate change, driven by emission of CO2 and other greenhouse gases, interacts with all the other big threats. And so basically I want to distill it down to habitat loss due to people building too much stuff in unsustainable ways, and pollution, in particular CO2. Those are the 2 problems that we're going to talk about for the rest. So here's the big solution to climate change, of course. I just love this. But the numbers don't totally work out. There's other solutions. You could create 3.3 billion humans who are actually, anyway. Okay. So what we're doing to protect biodiversity, this is a little bit just to talk to you about kind of how it's not hopeless. We are accomplishing some things. And then I'm going to end with an appeal to you guys for some stuff to keep in mind as you're creating the future. So the California Native Plant Society works in several ways to protect the biodiversity of California. We do vegetation mapping, where we go out in the field and count every individual plant that's out there, and we characterize the vegetation type for that spot in California. We've done that for 1/3 of the state, and we're assembling a map of what grows where. And vegetation assemblages are very unique biologically and also strategically. They tell you about a place and help us to identify those special places that are most in need of conservation. A lot of this is about collecting data, analyzing it, and making allocation decisions. We need to build something somewhere. Let's not build it on top of the Mona Lisa. Let's put it on this newspaper funny pages. So save the good things. We have a rare plant program that collects data, analyzes it to decide which plants are closest to the edge of extinction. Again, we want to make decisions based on good data, and knowing which plants are most imperiled with extinction is super important and super valuable. This is our logo plant, the Enceliopsis covelii, that was extinct when it was chosen for the CNPS logo, driven extinct by burrow browsing in Death Valley. CNPS and others fought to take the burrows off that important land, and the plant reappeared. It's still rare, but as you can see, it's supporting a community. This is the kind of stuff that we're trying to do. And we promote native plant gardening, and I could talk to you more about that afterward, but that's really a strategy for bringing habitat back into our built landscapes so that we don't have to worry as much about the natural habitat outside, that the organisms that depend on it are more widespread and more stable. And then for the rest of this, I'll talk about our conservation program. And our conservation program, just to talk about one example, and this is, I think, something that you're going to appreciate. In the distance, you can see Ivanpah Dry Lake Bed. That's in the California deserts, a glorious place, truly wonderful. And the proposed site of an industrial-scale renewable energy facility, Ivanpah, built by BrightSource. You've probably heard about this. This is the one that's shooting birds out of the sky, baking them with it's a mirror array. So it's, concentrating light, shooting the birds out of the sky. Pilots flying into Las Vegas are filing all kinds of complaints because it's blinding them. The newest is that they planted a bunch of milkweed underneath these arrays to support monarch butterflies. The monarchs have hatched. They fly up from the milkweed, see this giant glowing ball, and go for it. It's nasty. The biggest bug zapper in the world, and it's not making any money. They're burning a lot more natural gas than they thought because the liquid salt in the tower, thank you. It's just colder out there than they thought it would be, so they have to burn a lot of natural gas to keep it warm enough to run. So anyway, so this is Ivanpah Dry Lake Bed before CNPS advocated for surveys for rear plants. This is after we did, and we helped do those surveys. So this is what we have to lose. As we get desperate for solutions to our hunger for energy and our very well-intentioned concern about finding alternative energy sources, this is what we have to lose. Each color is a different rare plant that probably occurs in very few other places anywhere in the world, only in California. When you build a facility like that, you have a good chance of driving one or two of these evolutionary stories extinct. And as you build more of these things across all of the California desert, there's so much going in there, it's mind-boggling. And across every flat chunk of California, except for some reason our rooftops and our parking lots, this is what you have to lose. And so I'm just thanking you guys for coming up with some alternatives, with something that doesn't have the same footprint, that really is a much more rational solution to a very real problem, to the problem of cutting CO2 emissions. So this is the desert, this is the California desert, this is the California desert on $3.1 billion of subsidies. So this is Ivanpah. Yeah. And there you go again. So that's Ivanpah. I just came from a Google shareholders meeting where this stuff came up sideways. Some climate change deniers had some shareholder resolutions about Google's investment in these alternative energy things. And I found myself agreeing with them, but for a different reason. We have lore out there of how things can go wrong. We have a lore of, the planet Vulcan, which was very much like Earth with a warring species, and they ultimately discovered rationality, but it was too late to save their biota. They roasted it. As everyone here knows, I'm sure, planet Vulcan is a difficult place to live. It's hot, dry, all that kind of stuff. We want to avoid that. We also want to avoid kind of the Blade Runner style future. If you remember those cities of Blade Runner where there's nothing left alive because we built over all of it, that's another future that we want to avoid. And so the first thing that I want to do is thank you very much for helping us to avoid that first one where we just do an A1 scenario, burn all our carbon, and Venus the place. But as you're doing that, I want to make sure that you're taking some care to avoid unintended consequences. As we are successful with thorium-based reactors, with molten salt reactors, with all this technology, there's the potential to give humans too much of a good thing. There's a potential to give us the ability to desalinate all the water we want so we can finally build great cities up and down Baja, and every coastal desert can be full of people in their cars. We've seen previous generations of nuclear physicists have come to regret what their technology provided. Those folks building the solar panels have come to regret it to some degree. And I'm hopeful that, I don't know how you guys will apply this concern as you move forward. It's not like you have a choice how technology gets applied. But it's important that we're mindful of it and we look for ways to avoid the unintended consequences. Ultimately, humans need to use less energy. Approximately, we need to use less fossil fuels. But I encourage you to be mindful that too much of a good thing can be a problem. And that's why the title of my talk was, what do we have to lose? Why you're doing something is very important. It's not just how. My stepfather's an engineer, I get it. The how and the what is very compelling, but you need to also remember the why. And so I'm just putting that out there for you. And this is my perspective shot. This is a weird population of oaks on coastal Marin that we thought were willows on an old fossil sand dune, 150,000 years old. Thought it was willows, thought it was another kind of oak. Came out, it's a new subspecies of oak that really should not be growing on the coast. And it wasn't growing on the coast 12,000 years ago, when you could walk 40 miles out to the islands that are out there. We had a very rapid episode of sea level rise in the last 15,000 years, really between like 15 and 8,000 years ago, at least as fast as we're going to see for the next little while. These systems out there have taken some climate change. So climate change isn't necessarily our biggest problem. It's really the human impact at the same time. So these organisms have always been able to move around, to diversify, to deal with changing climate. We're throwing some really good change at them. They're going to be challenged. But the bigger challenge is the fact that to move around, they're going to have to move across freeways. And it's going to be much harder if I'm more concerned about global paving than I am about global warming. And global paving is a potential as we clever primates figure out more tools to satisfy our needs. So that's what we have to lose, and thank you.
Thank you, Dan.